get her out of the shop. Go reverse on these modern units, you know? Can't do that with the new ones. I guess we're just waiting for AJ to get some iron fired up. Yours have been in heated, right? So they're probably a lot happier. These things have been in -20 for the past week. They're just not running good. So last season, we kind of embarked on a new adventure between us, the crew at Snow Tracks. We embarked back in time, right? Took a trip back in time in the snowmobile world and picked up some old iron. And we thought it might be interesting to sit down and kind of explain the story behind why and how we did that and what we ended up doing with it, where it all ended up for this season. The whip was the originator, and it was from the wobble ride in Waconia. That's right. And Luke went down, he found it with $500, and he got the matching suit to go with it. And that was sort of, I think, the catalyst to all of us going out and jumping into this vintage sort of epic. We kind of got the bug after riding the whip. Every person who rode the whip here at the office, including you, said, "Man, I can't believe how great that sled runs," right? Like, it runs so good. And I think everybody in the back of their mind was thinking, what if we got some more of these things? But nobody actually wanted to say it, right? What if we got some more of these, and what if all vintage sleds run like this?
Well, that was a huge mistake on everyone's part to assume that they all run like that, because the whip it's the standout of the whole fleet. I mean, it runs like a 2015 sled.
Well, then our buddy Kyle showed up with his Evinrude, right? And he comes to the office one day and says, "Check out what I bought for $400. We're all looking at it like, "What did you buy, man?" And it ran like a top too. And I mean, he beat on that thing out in the woods and
but it
never
was ugly.
gave up. It was ugly. Kind of part of its charm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what really kind of restarted. Once we saw somebody else do it, we pulled the whip out. When you went and picked up your 2 Skidoos, you got some crazy going with Skidoos. I ended up going and adding the Snowjet to the fleet.
And I refused to buy one. Actually, I still am in the market, but I want a perfect 78 Enticer 250, and my standards are too high.
Keep looking. Yeah. But what we learned real quick, right? I mean, the first thing everybody does these days once they get something they love and they want to share with people is you start a Facebook page, and that's just the thing to do. So we came up with, of course, Leaf Spring Bangers. And that was kind of a thing between you and me and Kyle. We came up with that name, and it took off. And what do we have?
Over 3,000 people who join in the craziness and the mayhem, and
in only a few months.
Exactly, yeah.
It was nuts, and it's all like guys like our age, you know, with old citations and junk that they've been doing what we are doing now, hitting snowbanks and jumping stuff. They've been doing it for a while.
They've been banging.
Banging.
That's what it is, man.
So for people who are around my age, this whole phenomena is kind of weird, because for you guys, these things are something really unusual, different, you know, new. They're not new. But for us, this is what we did. I mean, we went out on 35 years ago today in the wintertime, we would be out and riding 75 or 100 miles on these sleds. And you guys think if the pull rope, you know, works and doesn't pull out of it and it'll fire up and go and you can take a lap around the lake and jump it off a cliff or something, that's really cool.
Doing what we do, and we've done for many years, we grew up riding new stuff. It was always new. The consequences to riding 120, 130, 150 horsepower snowmobiles when you screw up, they can be pretty big. Yeah, problems get big fast. So this, you know,
30 horsepower, extremely terrible friction and loss of horsepower due to that friction, and like suspension that is almost non-existent, pretty much means that you're not going to get yourself in too much trouble.
We're learning about what these sleds were and how they developed and where we got today thanks to sleds like these. And it's neat to kind of go back and then start from the beginning and roll your way back up.
I think it gives you a much better appreciation for technology, where we are today and where we've come from. Because you look at this and you go, I can hands-on fix this, manipulate it, time it, change it, adjust it, clean it, put it back together and make it run. On a sled nowadays, you can't physically do that. You can't pull anything off and fix anything. You have to take a piece out and repair it and replace it with a brand new electronic piece.
One of the things that I think as being your dad that's been the most fun for me is to watch you guys and to watch you try and figure out stuff. And then you let me come over and I feel like a genius when I point at stuff because it was old school to me. So when I tell you how to get the things running, it's kind of fun and kind of rewarding to talk these things through. And you're right. I mean, the sophistication of the new snowmobiles doesn't allow you to really experience hardly anything mechanical. I mean, what do we talk about? How you set up the compression dampening on your shocks. These things, if you want to live out there, you had to know how to make them run or you wouldn't get home.
So our reference point for vintage snowmobiles, I think, is actually pretty good. I mean, we don't just have 2 or 3 sleds. I think at one point we were up to almost 10 total, and from about 4 or 5 different manufacturers. So I think we've got a pretty good scope of understanding of vintage sleds, and along with that understanding has come the understanding of how these things work, how to repair them,
How they don't work,
and sometimes how frustrating it can be to try to get them to work. Like today with me, I was 3 for 3, didn't want to run properly. So, you know, there's some of that
But
time
they
where
ran.
Yeah,
They
they all
did
ran.
run.
They just didn't run
Just not today.
well.
Well, I mean, it's just part of the game, right? When you're buying these sleds, when you're buying them, you know, there's sleds that look great and don't run and probably are never going to run, and there's sleds that look like junk and run like tops.
I think one of the things that you guys don't understand because you weren't there is that 70s period you're talking about where you own sleds and where all these sleds are boxed together is a very, very important period in the history of snowmobile development, because that sled, that Scorpion Whip, has a CDI ignition on it, but that Skidoo you've got, the 72, has point ignition, and there is like a huge difference in those days. I mean, everybody was running around like, you know, you got to get CD ignition. Well, now, you know, chainsaws have CD ignition.
I think it's neat to have that wide variety from not just a technical standpoint, but from a look standpoint. These things look weird, you know, they're so bizarre.
I think the ones that are the most intriguing too, and probably the most unreliable and the hardest to fix, are the ones that are dead and gone. I mean, like this thing and that. Those iconic names of the 70s that just disappeared, some of those are really, really hard to fix. And it's hard now to get people to even know them and know how to fix them or what's really wrong with them. Whereas, you know, Yamahas and Skidoos and Arctics and Polarises, there's lots of information and you can still get stuff for them. And this is a genre now. I mean, it's established. It's becoming very, very popular. One thing that I know for sure, I've known this my whole life participating in this sport, this is a disease. When you catch it, you can catch it on that whip or on this old Skidoo or on this Snowjet, you can catch it, and once you got it, you want to play around with these things and you'll ultimately end up buying a newer and better snowmobile. So probably there's some people coming into the sport who haven't owned a new sled and are doing it this way and having a blast.
When you're ripping down the trail on a sled like this with blue smoke flying behind you and you're doing about 30, but it sounds like you're doing 100 with a crazy helmet on, and you look serious, people it's like they don't know what to think. People on their real sleds are like, what is going on?
You can't get more people to stare at you than if you pulled up stark naked on a snowmobile.
No,
when you
it's
ride
true.
up on one of these things, it's like people are really, really intrigued.
The bottom line of it all for guys like us is that these aren't going to replace the new stuff. And I don't think anybody's ever going to go out and say, you know what, I'm done with new sleds, I'm riding vintage from now on. That's crazy talk. Nobody's going to do that. But I think that there's a real place for this kind of equipment in everybody's garage for those days when, you know, it's just, you just want to blow off some steam with no consequences and just not worry.
If you like this video, post a comment and tell us what you think. Then click on this link to subscribe to SnowTrax TV here on the YouTube channel.